All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Bible Shorts. This is, you could consider this two things. Number one, this is the official introduction to Bible Shorts, right? Where I'll just give you a quick overview of what Bible Shorts is about. But really, this is our emancipation message, right? Yesterday was Emancipation Day, so we are a day late for Emancipation Day, but I don't think we are a day late for the message itself, right? So we want to go through a few things in this message, and let me just call them out quickly. So as I said, a little intro to Bible Shorts. We'll be talking a little bit about Black Panther, the movie, right? We want to look a little bit into history, the rise and fall of empires. We would touch on the transatlantic slave trade, and from there, we will go into some of the visions I would have received just in my own personal meditation and communicating with the Lord, right? So first of all, Bible Shorts. This was intended or is intended to be a platform where we study the Word, right? Because we see the Bible as our foundation. Now, the second part of Bible Shorts is action word. Now, why action word? Because the whole idea is for us to study the Bible in order to take action, right? So we are learning principles, not to sit down on them. This is not a storybook reading session, right? Or a storybook reading platform. We don't see the Bible as a big storybook. We see it as a book about life, right? From the creator who designed life, and he left these things for our benefit. So we want to learn them so that we can apply them, so we could take action with the things that we learn, so we could see the benefits for us, for our family, for our community, and for nations, right? Because God is interested in nations as much as he's interested in us on an individual level. The whole creation with respect to human beings was so designed so that communities and nations could be developed, right? Um, so the hope is that as we continue to study the word and take action, we are going to see positive changes in our own lives, in our families, our communities, and the nations, all right? So let me now go quickly and touch on Black Panther, the movie. And here's what I want to focus on. I believe the second movie is going to be released. I'm not sure when, but I believe it's this year from what I've seen um, on social media, right? But I remember the first Black Panther movie, and what stood out to me was the way people dressed. I mean, people made a big affair. When I say people, the African diaspora, right? People made a big deal about going to see this movie. I mean, they dressed like royalty, right? And this was so powerful for me because what I saw is one movie, basically a Hollywood production about, a comic book, right? Probably did more for the self-esteem and the psyche of the African people than all the years of debates and many of the movements and all these different things, right? Not dismissing these things that went before because they were very important. But I look at the way people treated this thing as royalty because of the way the characters themselves were portrayed, right? Wakanda was a nation, and not just any type of nation. And this is the thing for me. I love the way we dressed up, right? And treated ourselves as royalty to go and see the movie. But more so, what I want to find out, especially for my people here in the Caribbean, is that all we took from it? Do we recognize the way this nation was? right? And this would lead really into what I want to talk about and focus on. When you looked at Black Panther, the movie, did Wakanda come across as a poor Black nation? Were they a nation looking like they're begging for a seat at the table? Were they a nation so dependent on everybody else that, they always had to look to outside to solve their problems, right? They had to look to foreign input for innovation and for science and technology and all of these things, right? Were they a nation always coming with their hands out, looking for some sort of so looking for money, right? Like they broke, we are just a poor broke nation, and everybody else has to fund us. No, they were a powerful nation in their own right. And why were they powerful? Notice they did not go around trying to conquer other people, right? They had their own internal, power dynamics, right? But they were not a nation going around and conquering and colonizing other people. What did they do? They took advantage of the natural resources that they have, or that they had, or have, however you want to say it, right? And they built upon that, right? They advanced themselves in science and all these other areas. And, you look at Black Panther, and for me, I would think one of the best ways to show appreciation for the movie is to do things like start a science center, right? Start a coding center, take action more than just, okay, we dress up and we look like royalty and we go and see the movie and we celebrate and then we come back home after we still just put a whole bunch of money in some producers or whoever else pockets, right? And all we get to do was just celebrate. My point is, let us take it further than that. Let us look at what this nation as a people were able to do and say to ourselves, listen, we could do it because we see examples of this in reality. I mean, of course, there is a movie, so many things are exaggerated, right? But are there not stories of nations that started off, and recently, nations that would have started off as what we call developing nations? And we see the tremendous progress they have made, many of whom, or some of whom, don't even have much natural resources themselves, right? So let us not just look at the glitter of the movie, and let us not just see it as an occasion to just dress up. Let us look at some of the fundamentals that they did as a nation and realize that we can do the same thing. We can take some of those same steps, right? So when we look at history now, so jumping off a Black Panther, I want us to recognize something. In the Caribbean, we are basically a post-colonized people, right? We were colonized by major powers. Now, when you look at history, this is not anything new. People have been conquering people for as far back as history goes. More powerful nations, whether in military might, scientific might, technological might, whatever the case may be, right, would often expand and conquer people weaker than themselves. But look back and see where some of these mighty empires are today, right? A lot of these nations that, especially from the Bible perspective, when you look at like Rome, you look at the Greek Empire, you look at the Medo-Persian Empire, you look at the Assyrian Empire, you look at the Egyptian Empire. Where are these superpowers today? Most of these places now are tourist attractions. So throughout history, there has always been that ebb and flow, that rise and fall. Mighty people and mighty nations rise up and they also disappear, right? So there's always a shifting taking place. So we now are coming to the transatlantic slave trade. That also initiated a shift, right? You look at the English, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, the Dutch, a lot of these major players who were involved in the slave trade, especially those who came to the Caribbean, right? Between Trinidad and Tobago, we probably passed through all of them, right? French, Spanish, Dutch, English, everybody, all right? Now, this event itself, we could call it evil, All right. God didn't design human beings to go and thief other human beings and enslave them. He didn't design us to try to have or force dominion upon each other. So that is outside of God's original intent. But we are dealing with the mess that came after we decided that we're not going to listen to God. We will do our own thing, right? So all these things in history and what going on presently, we could call it the side effects of disobedience. So coming back to the slave trade, the African people were stolen, as the song says, stolen from Africa, right? We were brought to the Americas, brought to the Caribbean, forced into labor. And of course, this was very traumatic. However, we also have to remember that before we were brought here, before the Europeans came here, there were already people living here, right? There were already people, all these islands were populated, the Americas were populated. And most of these people were displaced. They were either killed or they died due to sickness and disease, right? Just as we see many times in the Bible, only a remnant remained. All right. So all of us who are here in the Caribbean, a lot of the people or we could say most of the people in North America and a large percentage of the people in Central and South America are foreigners, right? But we are here now and we identify as nationals of our respective countries. Okay. So the original people were displaced and a new set of people came in. And we are among that new set of people, right? The Africans came in as slaves. We had people who would have come in as indentured laborers, people looking for a better life, like the Indians. We have the Syrians, Lebanese, we have the Chinese, right? So lots of different people came to this region, either as the ruling class, people looking for a better life, or people who were stolen and brought here as slaves. Now, this is where we get to the vision that I have. And I think now with Emancipation Day even coming, leading up to our independence, is a very fitting time to share this. So that was just, the backdrop. So this all started, I would say, just before COVID. Whatever was the year COVID really, came out internationally, the start of that year, right? Because from the preceding Christmas, I had finished reading out the Bible in that December and I started over, right? So by the time we got to the new year, almost at the end of December, I think I had already gone through Genesis and I was in the book of Exodus. And, around this time, I think a lot was happening in terms of Black Lives Matter with a lot of the police killings in particular that were going on in the US. And these things now were starting to really get attention globally, right? So one of the things I was also doing around that time, I remember looking at a movie, one of these, what was it? I think it was The Birth of a Nation, right? One of these slave-related shows. And, all that just sort of brought the whole picture together because I was looking at this movie, I was reading the book of Exodus, looking at how the nation of Israel were enslaved for 400 plus years, and then God with his mighty hand, delivered them, right? And I remember asking the Lord, I said, look at the similarities between the transatlantic slave trade with the African people and the nation of Israel, right? We were enslaved for about 400 years. Very similar to what was taking place or what took place with the nation of Israel. And I looked at the fact that, when God delivered Israel, he didn't bring them out broke, right? He brought them out with wealth. So they get the back pay, severance pay, injury pay, whatever kind of pay it had to get, they got that, right? So they came out with a lot of substance. They came out with enough resources to take them through the transition period into the starting of a new nation, right? And that's a whole next story. And I asked the Lord, I say, well, Lord, what about us? Look at how much we went through. What you do for the African people? And when the Lord gave me an answer, I felt so silly. Like the question itself was so dumb, right? But it's not that the question was dumb, It's just that I really, like most of us, I believe, could not see what the Lord already did. We just focus on the negative. All right. Not saying the Lord caused slavery or the Lord decided, you know what, the best thing for these African people is to be enslaved. No, far from it. Bad things happen. It has happened throughout history. It will continue to happen. But the Lord is still able to intervene in the bad situations to bring about good, right? So that's the perspective we're looking at. And when he answered, and I remember, yes, the next thing that was happening, I think a lot of conversations were also going on with respect to reparations, right? So that's to really bring the whole thing in context now. And when the Lord answered, he's like, but I already gave you all reparations. I already paid you all. And I'm like, Lord, what do you mean? Right? And then the Lord began to break it down. And I mean, some of these things are very, what's the word? Controversial. So I probably won't go into to all of it. A lot of people, they may not be mature enough to receive it, or you may not really see the truth in it. But suffice it to say, right? This is how I get it, so this is how I'll give it. North America is a different dynamic. Again, all these peoples were displaced, and I want you all to follow me carefully and just try to pay attention to the real meat and don't get distracted, right? The original peoples, for whatever reason, throughout the Caribbean, throughout South America, Central America, North America, were displaced. And the Europeans came in, some other people came in, and the European also brought in slaves, right? North America is given to the Europeans, right? Now, because of slavery, a lot of the population also turned out to be, or is comprised of, not turned out to be, is comprised of African people. North America was not given to African people. It was given to the Europeans, and you see it politically, you see it in the structures. What does this mean? Just that. This doesn't mean that the Europeans have a right to abuse other people, because to whom much is given, much is required. And when you look at history, especially Bible history, there are many times you will see something play off like this. Somebody doing stupidness. The Lord raises up somebody else to deal with that stupidness the last person was doing. This person continuing the same dotishness that they were raised up to deal with. So what am I saying? Even if our people are displaced and a new set of people come in, this new set of people will still be held accountable. And if you look at the world right now, especially at a lot of these countries that were powerful colonial powers, and you look at their state right now, they are on the decline. Another shift is taking place. So all that to say, don't feel that all the wickedness that happened, go turn that blind eye to it, right? So even though North America was given to the Europeans, they will be held accountable for what they did with that power, with that with those lands that they were given, right? Did they show love? Did they love their fellow man? Did they help empower people? Or, well, we know how the history goes, right? And I wouldn't go too much into Central and South America. Let me come to my Caribbean and my Caribbean people. And this is where it really struck home, because the Lord had to show me the different dynamics, right? North America was really given to the Europeans, right? The Caribbean, when you look at most of the Caribbean, it is almost homogeneous African populations, right? What I mean is mostly Negro people, or mostly African people. So when we started becoming independent, like Trinidad and Tobago, like our big brother Jamaica, and I will explain why I use the term big brother, right? And the forefather, the one who started it all, Haiti, poor Haiti, right, who fought off superpowers, and these same people, they conspired to ensure that Haiti would not rise up, right? Anyway, before, I go all over the place. So the Lord showed me the Caribbean, and he said, look at the Caribbean. I have already given your lands. So while you're still fighting for reparations, you miss the fact that I have paid you already. And I was like, wow, because here's the thing. When you look at the Bible account of Israel, leaving Egypt wasn't easy. It is God who did it. But after they left, that mental transformation wasn't easy. As a matter of fact, that whole generation died out, right? Of people who were above 20 years of age, who were at the age where they could have entered into warfare. That whole generation died out with the exception of Joshua and Caleb. Why? Because they could not conform themselves, right? They came out of slavery, but they were not emancipated. They did not have that mental transformation. As Bob Marley says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. They were not able to make the shift. So you find it often takes more than one generation for a people who have experienced that level of trauma to come out of that and then make the shift to start to build themselves up, right? And that is what happened with us in the Caribbean. That is what is going on with, the whole African diaspora in this region, right? But when you look at us in the Caribbean, we still so caught up in this mental trap that we are not seeing. Some basic things the Lord started showing me now as this whole thing opened. When the colonizers came here, they did not come here to lie down on beaches and drink cocktails out of coconuts. They didn't come here for tourism. So who told us now the only thing we're good for is tourism and culture? Here used to be a huge production center. Now, granted, the business model was a slavery business model. But why can't we still be producers? You look at a nation like Israel, right? The reformed Israel after the Second World War. You look at what they had. You look at the resources they had. Infertile soil, hardly any water, a population mostly who knew nothing about farming because these were people who came back, right? And look at the level of their agricultural productivity right now. Why can't we in the Caribbean do that? Why can't we in the Caribbean be putting out technological advancements? We are just as any other human being. We have a mind just as any other human being. But you see, this is where leadership comes in. This is the importance of understanding what true freedom is about. So the Lord has already given us lands, right? We became independent. Haiti took their independence, right? Jamaica got independence the same month as us. This month of August, Jamaica's independence is the 6th of August. TNT's independence is the 31st of August, right? So this is why I call Jamaica our big brother. And over the years, you realize Trinidad and Jamaica in particular are two of the most influential nations in the Caribbean. And we are very influential in the region. You look at even things like athletics, right? You look at, our national GDPs and all these different things. Trinidad and Jamaica are very influential. And it's like the Lord was saying, look, you all are like brothers, right? But what do we do with that relationship? Okay, so you see, I'm a bit excited. So the mind is going all over the place. But that is what the Lord showed me. I have already given you resources. All your problem is, all you don't know what to do with it. And we see it in our leadership. We see it over when we look back, how many of our resources other people get rich off of. And even now, other nations, other entities outside of the region making plenty money while we continue to make poor deals. We continue to negotiate poorly. We continue to operate like people who begging for a seat at the table, right? Not realizing what we have. We continue to have leaders that compromise for self-gain at the expense of us, the people, while what they do is probably push us to fight politics with each other. So we fighting down which party we want to support, and our region is still in a mess. Our nations are still in a mess. We are far from where we could be and should be if we really take hold of all these collective resources we have and work together and come together as a region, right? CARICOM could be a mighty power. But, we still talk, fight amongst each other. We need to do better than that. All right. So here's the next part of the vision. And this one, I would say, blew my mind even more because I didn't initiate it. The first one, clearly, I asked God a question and he answered, right? Last year, I was meditating. I was up. This was sometime in the morning, probably around mid-morning. I was just there talking to the Lord, right? Meditating. And I heard very clearly 31 years ago. It's like, what? All right. So now my ears are perky. I'm waiting to hear the rest of it. And that was it, silence. Like 31 years ago. All right. So now I'm trying to do the maths in my head. 31 years ago. That's what, 1989. But I realized my maths was off. 1990. I was like, okay. Now the feeling I got was this is something on a national level. So I'm wondering, all right, what happened? 1990. So I Googled 1990. The very first thing to come up was the 1990 coup in Trinidad and Tobago. I said, nah, doubt that is it. So your boy going all over the place, pull up world events in 1990, all kind of bacchanal, right? And nothing bore witness. So eventually I gave up. I said, nah, but this is it. All right. All right, Lord, I really don't know what it is you're trying to tell me here. 2 days after, it came across the evening news that Mr. Abu Bakr had died, right? And I said, okay, Lord, this is really what he was talking about. The Lord was indeed referring to the 1990 attempted coup, right? So now I'm like, okay, well, what is the significance? And I'm gonna share something. I remember there was this guy that would visit our barber shop, right? Not that I own the shop, that is my barber shop. The place I go and we have lots of conversations. And this guy, for a long time, he would be saying Trinidad and Tobago is a cesspool. And both my barber and myself, as well as some of the other faithful crew, right? We would come down on this, man. You can't say that. How you say Trinidad and Tobago is a Trinidad cesspool? Nah, that is it. Nah, man, you can't say that. And all the gentlemen would reply is all right. Well, I would say, well, all right. And when this thing happened, and then the Lord started to reveal, he said, okay, now look at the dynamics of this thing, right? The reason that we hear, because we hear stories, that this coup was about corruption, dealing with corruption, right? In Trinidad and Tobago. And this group, they were fed up of it and they decided, you know what? Enough is enough. We're going to deal with this thing. There was a particular incident that they say was one of the major triggers for it, but needless to say, the coup took place. People lost their lives. This was a violent uprising, right? It was an attack, and people lost their lives within this whole thing, right? So there was bloodshed. And what happened after that now? The leader of the group, Mr. Abu Bakr, was released, right? I believe, that group, they even got money. And now I don't know where else in the world this happens, that somebody who attacks the prime minister of their country, right? Who attacks the parliament of the country is then released and given money, right? And what the Lord was showing me is, look, you start something to deal with corruption, but then you are released by only what could be considered corrupt practices. So the character was not there. We do need a revolution. We needed a revolution since then. Since in the 90s, we did need a revolution, right? But what we need is not a bloody revolution. Now, one of the things about Trinidad and Tobago, when you look at us as a nation, unlike many other nations, we did not gain a bloody independence, right? Trinidad, in terms of us being established as an independent country, was not built on a foundation of bloodshed, right? Now, this revolution is something that is needed. And I think what happened, the gentleman and his team went about this thing the wrong way. That is what, that is all they knew. And if you look across the world, you see a lot of these things happen. People see the need for a revolution, right? They rise up, but oftentimes the same revolutionaries end up doing the same wicked things that they fought for or they fought against. And that also is a trap and a cycle that many nations get caught up in. So it's like the Lord was saying, no, we need a quiet revolution. And this is a term I got from a gentleman in the Caribbean. And he and his team, right, they prayed about this thing many years ago, most likely before the time of Abu Bakr. Because again, they saw the need for change. They saw the need for a revolution. And what he says, or what he says the Lord told them, is that it takes 3 generations. So their prayer was, well, okay, Lord, let us be the first. And I'm doing my maths and I'm trying to wonder where, the coup fits into that timeline. And I believe it probably might have been based on Mr. Abu Bakr's age, might have been that 2nd generation, right? So people in the Caribbean have been praying about this, who we call men of God, have been praying about this. So I believe personally that something has already been set in place, because the Lord had been speaking to me a lot concerning the region. And you look at other people who receive prophecies concerning the region and even the shifts, right? Since the Caribbean started getting our independence, which is relatively recent. Trinidad is only 60 years independence, right? We'll be 60 years this year as an independent nation. That's young. We are babies compared to people who have been independent for hundreds of years. All right. So the region is still young. We have not yet come into maturity. So this is encouraging to me, because it means we still have something to press forward to. We are not on the decline because we have not even properly ascended. Right. So let me see. Right. So these guys have been praying, and that term quiet revolution was formed. And what is a quiet revolution? I don't want to misquote, but basically a quiet revolution has nothing to do with bloodshed. It is simply about engaging people, and people coming to that place where they are empowered in their minds. And you have now enough of these empowered people who can now begin to say, look, this is not what we want. This is the direction we want to go in. And they have sufficient leverage now to be able to instigate and initiate change in the direction that they want to see. And this is what we want to encourage for this Emancipation Day, that we really get emancipated in our minds from mental slavery. The Caribbean, the African diaspora is great. The Caribbean, right? And our Caribbean diaspora, we have people all over the world. We have a saying, you'll find anywhere you're going to the world, you'll find a Trini or a Trinbagonian, because we have people everywhere, right? We are exposed to technologies and systems and things all over the world. I believe what we lack is a national vision. This is my personal belief, that as a nation, Trinidad and Tobago does not have a national vision. We do not have something bringing everybody together, that regardless of the political parties involved, each party is going after the national vision. So even if one win, one lose, this one come and lose, the next one win, it is not going to disrupt our pursuit for that vision, right? And I also do not believe as a region we have a collective vision either, right? So we are fighting up amongst ourselves, fighting up with ourselves, and we are not coming together with a clear focus. And this will always benefit somebody else, because all the resources are going somewhere, right? And this is not saying, we should just close off from everywhere else. No, what we need to do is become better managers of our resources, right? So this is my encouragement for this Emancipation Day. All this wasn't about some negative thing or doom and gloom. When the Lord showed me all these things, it is very encouraging. The hard part for me, I think, is looking at it and asking, wow, Lord, I mean, I believe we could do this, but how do we start? Where to start? Where's the first step? And then I had to remind myself, when you are not the last Mohican, you are not even Elijah, when he was in his, oh Lord, woe is me, I am the only one. The Lord say, hey, no, no, okay, you're not that special, right? There are many other people. So for me, I also know there are many other people in the region. There are many other people of the diaspora, right, around the world. There are many people within Africa and even other nations that would want to work together to see us as a region build ourselves up. And we just need to start making the right connections. We need to start taking control and owning what we have, these resources that we have. We need to start holding our leaders accountable. And dare I say, we need to actually start having good leaders, right? One thing I remember a pastor saying, and this is something I want us to take a hard look at. He says, anytime you see a congregation with a very corrupt pastor, a very corrupt leader, it is an indictment against that congregation. What is he saying? A righteous people will never allow a wicked person to rule over them. So the fact that we are seeing we have a lot of corrupt leaders, it speaks to us as a people being corrupt. And we need to deal with that. We need to deal with ourselves. We need, as I was having a discussion with a young lady, everybody need to deal with their own party. If you are in a political party, you need to hold your party accountable. Don't watch what the other people do. You make sure you don't have no thieving, no corruption, and these things going on in your party. Make sure as a family, that is not something endorsed in your household. That is not lessons you teach into your children, right? We can do it. It is a hurdle. It feels like a mountain, but I am also encouraged because many years ago, a generation prayed and asked the Lord, let us be the first generation. Let us be generation one. I believe those of you who are around my age, right? I was born in 1981, so you could do your own maths. I believe we are either second generation, or if you could call us maybe a transition generation, the one between generation 2 and generation 3. So my hope is that most definitely my children and our children will be that third generation that sees the thing manifested. And they now get to live in a Caribbean, they get to live in a Trinidad and Tobago that has really emancipated itself. We live in a Caribbean that is really emancipated. We have a CARICOM that is really emancipated so that we can work more and add more value to our South American neighbors, to our Central American neighbors, to our North American neighbors. We can add more value to Europe. We can add more value to Africa and India and these nations around the world, because the Caribbean is full of beautiful, intelligent, and capable people. We know how to work hard. One of the things I remember looking at something, I can't remember what it was, always researching something. But in America, in certain areas, a lot of the businesses and the success that was happening there among Black people, it was by Caribbean people who migrated. Because why? You see, when we migrate, most likely, people always migrate with a vision. You leave home, you leave your comfortable place where you know everybody know you, to go to a strange land. Why? To improve your life. Imagine if we take that same type of attitude and use it home. Imagine if we make it easier for those who are on the outside to take their knowledge and their expertise and reinvest it in their homeland. I believe the diaspora still loves their home, right? Many of them, the reason they say, I don't think I could come back home, is not because they hate the TNT or they hate whatever country, Now that they are exposed to a certain level of systems, a certain level of order, a certain level of opportunities, right? It is difficult for them to come back and operate and live comfortably in a system like what we have, right? And I feel for them, but we have to find a way to make it work. I am praying and I am believing that Trinidad and Tobago, that Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean, and then we could even influence more of the region, that we really emancipate ourselves. This is our time to ascend. This is our time to rise up, right? And not rise up in, as I said again, no violent revolution. No, this is simply about us becoming ourselves, right? Because here's the thing a lot of people miss. When you take advantage of another person, when you depress another person, when you disempower another person, you are really hurting yourself, because God placed value in that person to add to society for your own benefit. So this is not about the Caribbean trying to disempower, right? It is us empowering ourselves so that as a region, we could add more value to the rest of the world. Yes, come here, for your lovely Caribbean getaway. We have no problem with that. But let us start owning more of our own hotel chains. How about we start owning some more of the airlines? How about we start owning a lot more of the inputs that go into these things? Let us rise up in technology. Let us continue. You know how amazing it is to see some of these small islands come in first place in things like the Olympics. Look at the way we are rising up in athletics. And if you, the international community, really look at the population of some of these islands, you will wonder why we should be beating you all in the first place. You all have cities, some of you all have cities that probably have more people than all the people in the Caribbean. This is who we are. We are a mighty people, and it is time for us to rise up, right? So we are on 41 minutes. I would want to speak a little more on this, right? Because even Trinidad and Jamaica, that brother relationship, I questioned a Jamaican gentleman on this, the same guy who prayed, the same guy who came up with the concept of quiet revolution. I'll probably invite him to share his story, so that we could share it on our platform, so all of us could learn and hear what it was like for their generation. So again, my name is Kerwin Joseph. I shouldn't say again, I didn't give my name. My name is Kerwin Joseph. If you are like me, and you have a passion to see our region, to see your nation develop, to see your nation, your people empower themselves, I just want to encourage you to say it can be done. The Caribbean, not only it can be done, I expect to see it done. And I expect to see it in my generation. I don't plan on leaving here and I ain't see no change at all, right? Let us come together. We need a movement. We do need a revolution. We have needed a revolution for a while now. Yeah? But not violence. We need a revolution based on love. We need a revolution based on understanding. We need a revolution based on empowerment. We need a revolution based on God and his principles, right? A revolution based on truth. Okay, let us stand. There are things that we believe to be wrong. Let us continue to stand. We don't have to allow other people to pressure us into going against our own conscience because of things they believe to be right, even though we fundamentally believe these things to be wrong. Let us deal with ourselves. Let us start saying, no, we will not accept corruption anymore, right? Because when you continue to be corrupt with our nation's resources, you are destroying my children's future. So there's a lot that we can say, but again, let me encourage you and continue to pray. Let us continue to move forward and take steps to see this become a reality. One of the areas in which we are involved in this revolution is agriculture, right? We have started something called We village through our homegrown business solutions company, and the main drive behind that is food security for families. The Caribbean needs to be food secure. There is no reason why we cannot be producing so much food that we have enough for ourselves, and we can also be major exporters on the international market, right? Our next area that we want to add to this revolution is in marriage and seeing marriages thrive, right? Marriage is the building block for family. Family is the building block for community, and community is the building block for nations. So help marriages, you help the nations, right? So I think these are the two main areas that we want to contribute to this revolution. So we also have a marriage-based program to help either people who marriage already in a mess, right? I know that's a very, very, very tough place to be in. We have been there. So that was the first program we created. But then in doing that, we realized, hey, wait a minute. You know, if people get enough information early on, their marriage might never get to that, to such a bad place to begin with, right? So now we also have something we created for engaged couples, you know, for people to go through even before they make that step. So that is what we can do. That is what we can add. Everybody has something, right? You have something. Look, as an example, homeschooling. Homeschooling is a growing phenomenon right now. But for me, still, when I look at, all right, let's say curriculums, curriculums out of the US, curriculums out of Europe, we have lots of great, fabulous educators right in the Caribbean. Where's our curriculums? Where we teach our own history. I don't necessarily want to go and have my children learning the history about America. I don't have anything against America, but why can't my children learn the depths of our history? Because we have created our own curriculum where we tell our story as we educate. So that is one of the challenges I would like to put forward. You know, there are many other areas that we can rise up in and add value. So let's do that. Let us emancipate ourselves. We have already made a great impact globally with our music, with our arts and culture, with the beauty of our islands and our beaches and even our people, right? But that is not all who we are. We can do much, much, much more. Okay? So happy Emancipation Day. I'll probably do a next video for independence where I will go, you know, a little more into some of these things, right? Now, I just want to keep talking because this is something I'm very passionate about, but there's Bible shorts, and right now this, you know, really turned out to be a long video. All right, so again, happy Emancipation Day. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. The Bible tells us wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And in all you're getting, get understanding. Pilate also asked the question, what is truth? Jesus says he is truth. So truth does exist. Finally, when man was created, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion, not over each other, over the earth, over the other created things, right? We ain't supposed to be treating each other bad. We're not supposed to be abusing each other and doing wickedness to each other. We're supposed to be operating in love. What is the great commandment? To love God with everything and to love your neighbor as yourself, right? These are the things that Jesus came and he reinforced. And this is the foundation that, you know, we encourage, all right? So let's really have a revolution for our benefit, for the benefit of our children and grandchildren and the future, but not a revolution based on violence, a revolution based on love and empowerment. So happy emancipation, people. Blessings.